It probably sounds insane. I should start with the backstory, but God, how hard it is to remember the simple, happy times before everything that happened. I met my wife, Catherine, when she was 24 and I was 28. We lived in a small town in Kentucky. You'd have trouble finding it, even with a map, and the population was tiny. Everyone knew each other. I'd worked as an electrician all my life. First at a factory, then I started my own small business. Repairs, wiring, private jobs. My love life had never really worked out until I met her. She worked as an elementary school teacher, smiled at every child, was kind and polite to everyone. My Catherine was the only ray of light in the darkness around me. I loved her for her simplicity. She could find joy in the most ordinary things. Morning coffee, the smell of wet grass, a cheap movie on the couch. We didn't have much money, but we had peace, a home, a dog, and that feeling that everything was right, that everything would be fine. I spent evenings fixing things while she wrote lesson plans or knitted. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, listening to crickets, or stay up all night talking about everything and nothing, thinking about children and what we'd name them. Back then, it felt like life had finally found its meaning. The problems began maybe 2 months ago. At first, small things. She started having trouble sleeping, then began looking at me strangely, as if something in my face disturbed her. I asked if everything was okay, and she laughed. Sorry, just tired. The kids at school are driving me crazy. Gradually, though, I can't even say exactly when it got worse. She slept less, not because she had insomnia, but because she was afraid to fall asleep. I asked her what was wrong, but she said she was fine. Still, when we lay together, she'd suddenly get up and go into another room, returning only at dawn. She started having nightmares, but never told me what they were. One day, I lost my temper. You have to understand, I was just worried about my wife. From the lack of sleep, she started to look worse. Dark circles under her eyes, red eyes, pale skin. She lost weight, and every time I tried to help, she pushed me away. So I set her down across from me and directly asked what was she dreaming about. She was silent for a long time, trembling and glancing at me furtively, as if she was afraid. And then, when tears began to roll down her cheeks, she whispered, "There's a man in my dreams. God, I'm scared, Tom." I went to hug her, and when I reached for her, she flinched, as if I'd frightened her. After that, things seemed to get better, or so I thought. How wrong I was. She used to ask how my day went, but now she just stared out the window. With each passing day, she spoke to me less and less, her words short and dry, and then she'd go to the bathroom or kitchen for some errands, closing the door behind her. And it wasn't just the silence, her eyes had changed too. If before they were green, emerald-like, full of life and love, now her gaze made my spine go cold. There wasn't anger or hatred there, no. It was something closer to mistrust, weariness, as if she was seeing me for the first time. Over the next week, I began to feel anxious, a strange burning under my skin, as if something was wrong, but I couldn't tell where the crack was until I realized. She was studying me. When I drank coffee, I could feel her eyes on me. I'd look up and she'd immediately turn away, pretending to slice fruit, but her fingers trembled and the knife froze halfway to the board. I'd step outside for a smoke, and when I turned around, I'd see her peeking through the curtain, then she'd instantly close it. When I showered, I'd catch her watching me, studying my body, then she'd run away. She started doing it even while I slept. She almost stopped talking to me, instead writing something in a notebook and hiding it as soon as I entered the room. Photos began to disappear from their frames. She'd talk on the phone with someone, but hang up the moment I came in. I made an appointment with a psychologist for us, but she refused, said she was afraid to be near me. It all happened so suddenly. It seemed just yesterday we were stargazing in each other's arms, and now this. The strangeness grew every day. Sometimes she asked me to sleep on the couch. I agreed, hoping it would calm her, but it was useless. Her paranoia only worsened. It got to the point where, when I tried to hug her, she screamed, "Don't come near me," and flinched as if I'd hit her. After one of those nights, I decided I had to find out what was really going on, even if it meant taking her to a doctor afterward. I pretended to be asleep when she stood in the hallway. Then she slowly approached, soft, careful steps. She stopped at the foot of the bed, and for several seconds there was a dead silence, broken only by her uneven breathing. I could feel her watching. Not just watching, comparing. That's when I became truly terrified, a cold dread twisting inside me as my wife became something I couldn't recognize. Then the bed shifted slightly. She sat down on the edge. The air grew heavy. I could feel her stare physically, like pressure on my skin. Then her cold fingers gently touched my wrist, held it for a few seconds, then quickly let go, as if burned, and whispered, "Pulse faster than Tom's." My heart clenched so hard I nearly twitched. She leaned closer. I could hear her breathing against my face, short, shaky. She smelled of lavender and something sour that made goosebumps crawl down my back. Her lips barely moved. I remember clearly. Tom had a small scar right here. She touched my cheek. But you don't. I clenched my teeth to keep from gasping. Those few seconds of silence lasted an eternity. What scar? I never had a scar on my cheek. I'd know if I did. I wanted to sink into the ground and scream all at once, but I kept lying still until I heard a choked sob and her fading footsteps. The door slammed. I opened my eyes, my heart pounding furiously. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, too afraid to close my eyes. In the morning, I went to work early, dreading the hours until my shift ended. That evening, over dinner, I said, "Kate, we need to talk. What's going on?" She gripped her fork so tightly her knuckles turned white, then looked me dead in the eye. "Tom, you've been acting strange." "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Sometimes you look different. Sometimes your voice sounds wrong. You even smell different." I didn't know what to say. My head was chaos, and somehow I just laughed. "Kate, maybe you're just imagining things?" "I don't know, Tom." My eyes fell on the knife rack. There was a clean strip of dust where the Ladger's kitchen knife should have been, the one we used for everything. Bread, meat, anything. I distinctly remembered it being there before that night. My heart slammed into my throat with a primal panic. I looked at Kate and she was staring right at me. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. It hit me. Then my wife might be planning to kill me. The next morning she left for work and I, like a caged animal, started searching the house. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I know I should have just left, or taken her to a hospital. But she's my wife. I love her. She has to see that I am me. I tore through the apartment, frantic, desperate to find something, anything that would help me understand what was happening to her. And I did. After about an hour, in the back of the closet behind a old pile of sweaters, I found her wooden box. Old, slightly cracked. The lid was ajar, and when I opened it, a thick notebook fell into my hands. It smelled of coffee and sweat, her initials on the cover written in her neat cursive. My heart froze as I realized it was a diary she'd been hiding from me. The paper bent under my fingers, her handwriting familiar but this time jagged, shaky, the page stained with what looked like tears. "He's sleeping. I stand by the bed and watch. He looks like Tom, but he's not. Tom had a scar on his left hand, from that accident by the river. This one's skin is smooth. He smiles, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. Something replaced him. I keep counting days, marking steps. If the real Tom, my husband, is alive, where is he?" A wave of nausea rose in my throat. With each page, her handwriting grew more erratic. I tested his speech. He says "I love you" in the same tone, but without warmth. Not like before. Tom smelled of vanilla, but this one smells of dust and cheap cologne. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My knees trembled. The air around me tightened like a noose. I flipped to the last page. I can't let this thing stay in our house. It wears his smile, his name. I tried talking to it, begging, but it just smiled and said all the right words. It didn't defend itself. Maybe because it isn't afraid. Its right hand twitches when it lies. I could have killed it today, but for some reason I couldn't. I know I have to, for Tom. I won't let some monster wear his skin. My hands were slick with sweat. My whole body was sweating, even though the room was cold. I placed the diary on the bed and sat down, trying to process everything I'd just read. An accident? God, she was exaggerating. All that came out of it was a concussion and some bruised ribs. I stayed in the hospital for about a week? Yeah, 7 days. Then my phone rang, making me jump. It was Sheriff Martin, a kind old man I'd known for years. "Tom, everything all right over there?" Catherine called. "Said someone's living in your house pretending to be her husband?" I froze. "What did you say?" "Says you're not you? I've known him for years. Always seems stable. Domestic quarrel, huh?" "No, just stress. She's tired." Evening came slowly. I sat on the couch, elbows on my knees, looking at an old photograph, the one that used to sit on our mantel before all this. Catherine and I by the lake, smiling, her arms around me, the sun so bright that day we had to squint. I stared at us, at the little details, her blonde hair catching the light, her hand around mine, the green shimmer in our eyes. It felt like a lifetime ago. When the door creaked open, I nearly jumped. My wife's, if I can still call her that, steps were slow and tired, her bag thudding softly to the floor. She looked exhausted, her eyes red, her hair a mess. I stood holding the diary. "Kate, we need to talk." She looked at me warily, like a trapped animal sensing a snare. "What's that in your hand?" Her voice was even, but something trembled in it. I found this." "I need to understand what's happening," I said, showing her the diary. Catherine froze. For a moment I thought she'd break down crying, but instead she slowly stepped closer, looking straight into my face, her cold breath brushing against my skin. "So what did you figure out, Tom? That I'm crazy? You think I've lost my mind, don't you?" "No. You wrote that I've been replaced. That I don't have a scar." She turned away, her lips pressed tight. "Tom had one. We even joked it made him look tougher." I took a step closer, a strange knot tightening in my gut. "I'm the same man. I remember everything. How we met, the candles at our wedding, how you laugh when we watch comedies, what you said about that stupid show when we finished it. I remember everything, Catherine. It's me." She stared at me, unblinking, her shoulders trembling as if she were freezing. I looked into her eyes, and there was something there, pain and horror mixed together, as if I stood before her as someone both familiar and wrong. "You say it like you've rehearsed it," she whispered. "Because it's true." I stepped closer, my voice cracking into a shout. "What do I have to do for you to believe me? What?" Catherine said nothing, just breathed heavily, like she was fighting herself, staring into my eyes. Then she suddenly backed away, step by step toward her bag. I didn't realize what was happening at first. She bent down, as if for a handkerchief, and then the next moment I saw the glint of metal, a knife, the missing one. "Kate," I breathed, disbelieving. Catherine put it down. Stop pretending, you monster." I managed half a step toward her. She raised her hand. At first I thought she was only threatening me. Panic tightened my fists. I wanted to yell, to grab her shoulders, to make her listen, but then a strike. Burning pain slashed through my chest. Everything went white. The last thing I saw was her face, so familiar, twisted by terror and despair at once. She stood over me, her hand trembling, her lips whispering something like, "Tom, where are you, my love?" And then everything went dark. I woke up from the hospital. At first, nothing but thoughts. Then the smell of antiseptic, the beep beep of a monitor, unfamiliar voices. I tried to move my head, pain shot through my body. The doctor explained I'd lost a lot of blood but somehow survived. The knife missed my heart by an inch. Catherine had run away. I listened, not believing any of it was real. A couple of days later, Martin came by. I told him everything about the knife, the diary, her thinking I wasn't me. He listened, frowning, taking notes. When he finished and was about to leave, he turned back. "Didn't expect this from Catherine. Don't worry, we'll find her. When you're discharged, come by my place. I got some Cuban cigars from a friend. We'll relax a bit." Without thinking, I said, "I don't smoke." He frowned, about to say something, but then just nodded and left, closing the door behind him. For several minutes I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. Then I noticed a small mirror in the corner of the room. I looked at my reflection and froze. My face was pale, my lips dry, but that wasn't what caught my attention. Interesting. Can eyes change color from green to blue? How old must he be now? 8? 9? I stared at my neighbor, unsure what she was asking. She read the confusion on my face. "You're a cute little guy. I saw him biking down the lane earlier. He must be old enough for grade 4 now, right?" Mrs. Babbage was a bit on the older side, but I never thought she had shown signs of dementia. Not until now. I wasn't exactly sure what to say. She proceeded to stare at me, tilting her head, as if I was the one misremembering. I awkwardly opened my mouth. "Oh, right, my little guy." She brightened. "Yes, he must be in grade 4, right?" "Sure, yeah, he is." "What a cute little guy," she said, and returned to watering her flowers. It was an odd, slightly sad moment. I wondered if her husband had seen glimmers of this too. I could only hope that this was a momentary blip, and not the sign of anything Alzheimer's related. I took the rest of my groceries out of my car and entered home. I had a long day of teaching, and I just wanted to sit back, unwind, and watch something light on TV. But as soon as I took off my first shoe, I smelled it. Something burning on the stove. Something burning with lots of cheese on it. What the hell? I dashed over to the kitchen and almost fell down, partially because I was wearing only one shoe, but also because there was a scrawny little boy frying Kraft dinner. I let out a half scream. But very quickly, I composed myself into the same assertive adult who taught at a university. What, excuse me? Who are you? What are you doing here? The boy's blonde, willow-like hair whipped around his face as he looked at me with equal surprise. Papa, what do you mean? I'm here. He was a scared, confused child, and I couldn't quite place the bizarre inflection of his words. Do you want some KD, Papa? Have some. Was that a Russian accent? It took me a second to realize he was wearing an oversized shirt that looked just like mine. Was he wearing my clothes? I held out my palms like I would at a lecture, my standard everyone settle down gesture, and cleared my throat. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, or what this is. The boy widened his eyes, still frightened by my intensity. He stirred the food with a wooden spoon. It's KD, Papa, your favorite? Chili cheese kind. Don't you remember? His name was Dmitri, and he claimed to be my son. Apparently at some point there had been a mother, but he didn't remember much about her. He only remembered me. You've been Papa my whole life. My whole life, Papa. I tried having a sit-down conversation. In fact, I tried to have many sit-down conversations where I explained to Dmitri that would be impossible. But it always ended with him clutching me with impassioned tears, begging me to remember him. The confusion only got worse when my mother called. How is my grandson doing? She asked. I didn't know how to reply. The conversation grew awkward and tense until eventually I clarified my whole predicament. Mom, what are you talking about? I don't have a son. I've never had a son. My mother gasped a little, then laughed and scolded me, saying I shouldn't joke around like that. Because of course I've always had a son, a smart little guy who will be celebrating 9 this weekend. I hung up. I stood petrified in my own kitchen, staring at this strange, expectant Slavic child. For the next 10 minutes, all I could do was ask where his parents were, and he just continued to act frightened, like any authentic kid might, and replied with the same question, How did you forget me, Papa? My method wasn't getting me anywhere, so I decided to play along. I cleared my head with a shot of espresso. I told him my brain must have been scrambled from overworking, and I apologized for not remembering I was his father. He brightened immediately. It's okay, Papa. It's okay. He gave me a hug. You always work so hard. The tension dropped further as Dmitri finished making the noodles and served himself some. I politely declined and watched him eat, and he watched me watch him eat. So, you're okay now? You're not angry? His accent was so odd. No, I said. I'm not angry. I was just a little scrambled. His eyes shimmered, looking more expectant. So we can be normal now? A wan chill trickled down my neck. I didn't really know what to say, but for whatever reason, I did not want to say, yes, we can be normal now, because this was not normal. Far from it. This child was not my son. He started playing with his food and quivered a little, like a worried mouse seeking reassurance. Everything will be fine, I eventually said. No need to stress. Enjoy your noodles. To my shock and dismay, I discovered that Dmitri also had his own room. My home office had somehow been replaced by a barren, clay-walled chamber filled with linen curtains, old wooden toys, and a simple bed. The smell of bread and earth wafted throughout. I watched him play with his blocks and spinning tops for about half an hour before I started to yawn and say he wanted to go to sleep. It was the strangest thing tucking him in. He didn't want to switch to pajamas or anything. He just sort of hopped into his straw bed and asked me to hold his hand. Dimitri's fingers were cold, slightly clammy, little things. It was very bizarre, comforting him like my own son, but it appeared to work. He softened and lay still. He didn't ask for any lullaby or bedtime story. He just wanted to hold my hand for a minute. Thank you, Papa. I'm so glad you're here. So glad you can be my Papa. Good night. I inched my way out of the room and watched him through the crack of his door. At about 9:30, he gave small, childlike snores. He had fallen asleep. Cautiously, I called Pat, my coworker, with whom I shared close contact. She had the same reaction as my mother. Harlan, of course you have a son, from your marriage to Svetlana. My marriage to who? You met her in Moscow, when you were touring Europe? It was true that I had guest lectured 15 years ago across the UK, Germany, and Russia. I was awarded a grant for it, but I only stayed in Moscow for 3 days. I never met anyone named Svetlana. Don't be weird, Harlan. Come on. Pat's conviction was very disturbing. You and Svetlana were together for many years. We were? How many? Look, I know the divorce was hard, but you shouldn't pretend your ex-wife doesn't exist. I'm not pretending. I'm being serious. I don't remember her. Then get some sleep. I sipped on my second espresso of the night. But I have slept. I'm fine. Well, then I don't get what this joke is. Knock it off. It's creepy. I'm not joking. I'll see you tomorrow for the birthday. Birthday? Yes, your son's birthday. Jesus Christ. Good night, Harlan. Get some sleep. I didn't sleep that night. My efforts were spent scouring the filing cabinets and drawers throughout my house. I had credit card bills covering school supplies, kids' clothing shops, and costlier groceries. I even had pictures of Dmitri hung around the walls from various ages. It's like everything was conforming to this new reality. The harder I looked for clues to disprove my fatherhood, the more evidence I found confirming it. It was Dmitri who woke me up off the living room couch and said Uncle Boris was here. Uncle Boris? I peeked through the window and could see a very large blond man smiling back at me. Behind him was a gaggle of other relatives all speaking Russian to each other. Hello, Harlan. The blond man's voice penetrated past the glass. We're here for birthday. They all looked excited and motioned to the front door. They were all wearing tunics and leggings. Traditional birthday clothes or something? I was completely floored. I didn't know what to do, so I just sort of nodded and subtly slinked back into my kitchen. Dmitri came to pull up my arm. Come on, Papa. We have to let them in. I don't know any of them. Yes, you do, Papa. It's Uncle Boris. It's Uncle Boris. I yanked my hand away. It was one thing to pretend I was this kid's dad for a night. It was quite another to let a group of strangers into my house first thing in the morning. Dmitri frowned. I'll open the door. Wait, hold on. I grabbed Dmitri's shoulder. He turned away. Let go. I tried to pull him back, but then he dragged me into the living room again. Our struggle was on display for everyone outside. Boris looked at me with saucer eyes. Dmitri pulled harder, and I had no choice but to pull harder back. The boy hit his head on a table as he fell. Boris yelled something in Russian. Someone else hollered back. I heard hands trying to wrench open my door. Dmitri, stop, I said. Let's just take a minute to... You're hurting me, Papa. Oi! My front door unlocked. Footsteps barreled inside. I let go of my son and watched 3 large Slavic men enter my house with stern expressions. Dmitri hid behind them. Is everything okay? Boris peered down at me through his tangle of blonde hair. Yes, sorry, I said, struggling to find words. I'm just very confused. Confused. Why were you hitting Dmitri? The little boy pulled on his uncle's arm and whispered something into his ear. Boris's expression furrowed, but before I could speak further, a slender pair of arms pushed aside all the male figures and revealed a woman with unwavering, bloodshot eyes. Something in me knew it was her, Svetlana. She wore a draped brown sheet as a dress, with skin so pale I could practically see her sinews and bones. It's like she had some extreme form of albinism. Harlan, she said, somehow breaking my name into 3 syllables. Harlan. I've never been so instinctively afraid of a person in my life. It's like she had weaved herself out of the darkest edges of memory. I saw flashes of her holding my waist in Moscow, outside Red Square, flashes of her lips whispering chants in the shadows of St. Basil's Cathedral. Svetlana held Dmitri's shoulder, then looked up at me. Just tell him it will be normal. Tell him everything will be normal. No, this is not happening. None of this is real. Barefoot and still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, I bolted out the back of my house and hurtled towards my driveway. Before the rest of my new family could realize what was going on, I hopped into my Subaru and stepped on the gas. As I drove away from the house, I looked back into my rearview mirror, and I swear it didn't look like my house at all. I swear it looked like a thatched roof hut. Back at the university, I walled myself up in my study. I cancelled all speaking arrangements for the next week, saying I needed a few personal days. No one in my department knew I had a son. Nothing in my study indicated I had an extended Russian family. When I asked Pat about our phone conversation last night, her response was, "What conversation?" My mom said the same thing. With immense trepidation, I returned to my house the following day, and after setting foot back inside, I knew that everything had reverted back to the way it was before. No more framed pictures of Dmitri, no more alarming photo albums, and that clay-walled room where Dmitri spun tops and slept inside. It was just my home office again. To this day, I still have no clue what happened during that bizarre September weekend. But doing some of my own research, I'm starting to think I did encounter something in Moscow all those years ago. Some kind of lingering old curse, or a stray spirit, or a Chernaya Vedma, a black with disguised as an ordinary woman. Although I haven't seen any evil things bubble up around my place since, every now and then I do have a conversation with Mrs. Babbage, and she seems to remember my son very well. Such a cute little guy, always waving hello. Did you know he offered me food once? I think it was Kraft dinner. My daughter started talking about Mr. Mugi on her 4th birthday. My brother and I lived across the street from one another, and we held the party at his house since he could afford a pool and I couldn't. That day, the shift was indicated by a small tug on the skirt. I turned to see the beautiful hazel eyes of Melissa, my daughter, staring up at me. "Mommy, Mr. Moogie wants to come home with us." I knelt down to get to her level. "Who's that, baby?" She looked around, as if searching for him. "He's my new friend. I don't see him, though. He must have gone to grab his coat." I realized then that my little baby had her first imaginary friend. I nodded enthusiastically. "Of course he can. Mr. Moogie is more than welcome in our home whenever he wants." I thought nothing of Mr. Moogie, really. Although things around the house were strange after that, and a lot of it had to do with Mr. Moogie. She insisted on having her window open every night, and Mr. Moogie never seemed to want to be in the room with me. Every time I'd ask her where he was, she'd say something like he went home for the day, or he decided to go for a walk around the block. I once jokingly asked if he didn't like me. She looked at me hurt. "Oh no, Mommy. Mr. Moogie loves you a whole bunch. He just gets shy." This went on for a year. The only problem was, the more time went on, the more immersed she became in Mr. Moogie. She changed a lot of parts of her personality, which she said was something Moogie wanted for her. My emotions were mixed, worry and frustration. She would spend so much time by herself, opting to shut herself away in her bedroom with him rather than go spend her time outside. She refused certain things she used to love, and it was difficult to get her to even go to the store with me. I tried to take her to her dad's on weekends, but if I could even get her there without her throwing an enormous fit, I'd get a call within a few hours from my ex-husband, absolutely insisting that I pick her up. She was out of control at that point. She trashed his house on several occasions before he finally threw his hands up and yelled, "God damn it, Mary, take your fucking kid and get out of my life." She held her head in shame as I explained, while trying to contain my sheer anger, that what she did was entirely wrong. She just kept saying Mr. Moogie said it was the only way I could stay with you. I felt fed up, but I was more worried. I wanted to badly take her to a doctor, but the divorce left us broke and without insurance. Silently, I hoped she would grow out of it. One morning, I woke up to find that Melissa was fully dressed. Most of the time, she would opt for pajamas. "What's the special occasion?" I asked, treading lightly as possible. She had never flipped out and trashed our house, but I still find myself afraid of my own child. "Mr. Moogie wants to play outside today." I nodded, relieved that she was going to be outside instead of locked away. I decided that I'd do the dishes, so I could stay inside and still watch her playing in the yard. I couldn't have looked away for more than a few minutes, but when I looked back, she was gone. Running outside, I screamed her name but got no reply. I called the police immediately, and a search was started. Every hour that passed, I prayed to God that I didn't fully believe in. I prayed for my daughter's safety. I prayed that this was just one of the many odd but harmless occurrences. Hours turned into days, then weeks, months. Half a year had gone by, and there was no sign of Melissa. At 2:37 a.m. on an abnormally warm October night, a call came into the station from a man claiming to have seen someone carrying a body through his backyard. The police caught him in the act. Older man, probably in his 40s. Thick glasses, lanky body. Nothing at all special about him, other than the fact that the body he was trying to bury was that of my little Melissa. I'm sure you don't want the gory details, and I'm not willing to relive them. She had been abused in disgusting, inhuman ways for the entirety of the 6 months she had been gone. She was so thin and bruised, she was barely recognizable. I was asked down to the station, and had my brother accompany me. They wanted to see if I could recognize the guy. My brother grasped my hand tightly, like fighting back tears himself, as we stared at this strange man from behind weird mirror glass. It all felt like a bad episode of SVU. Detective Lorenzo stared with sympathy in his eyes. "Do you know this man?" I shook my head. "No, I've never seen him in my life." My brother looks at me with confusion. "What are you talking about? Don't lie to them, Mary." My head was so foggy. It took a few moments for me to realize what was said and reply, no, I've never seen him." He looked a bit angry with me then. "Are you shitting me? He was in and out of your fucking house for that past, year?" That was the tipping point. Later, I sat him at a metal table across from Detective Lorenzo. His tone had changed from sympathetic to accusatory. "How do you know Thomas Mooney?" He pushed a photo at the man that killed my daughter across the table. I shook my head, almost too bewildered to speak. "I don't know that man." He stood quickly, slamming his hands on the table. Yeah, this definitely seemed like a bad episode of SVU. "He was in your house. People saw him walking everywhere with you and your daughter. Your own brother saw the man come in and out of the house." I think that's when I made the connection. Moogie? There was no way. Mr. Moogie was imaginary. It was not possible that a man could have avoided me, being in my home with my child for a year. Yet the evidence was there. The neighborhood watch had surveillance cameras installed a few years before we moved in. The footage showed Thomas Mooney, a man I never met until I saw him in the interrogation room, crawling through the windows of my home, mostly Melissa's bedroom window. Hell, he even came and went through the front door several times. They asked a few people around the community if they ever saw him. Most of them nodded solemnly. They all assumed that he was a relative or a family friend. He'd always follow at a distance, and I never thought to look over my shoulder. I never saw him. I never fucking saw him. Not once. Single mother here, with a daughter that just turned 4 last week. During mornings, she likes to watch TV before I leave work, and the babysitter comes over. She sits there, gobbling down cereal and occasionally babbling nonsense. It's adorable, really. To say we're tight on money right now is an understatement. I can barely afford to keep the lights on, but every time I grimace at a new bill in the mail, there she is to pull me out of my storm. Smiling, laughing, my little ball of sunshine. She doesn't have many toys. Not new ones, at least. I typically end up buying her used toys from a messy aisle at Goodwill. But a couple days ago, a commercial popped up on TV. I was in the kitchen cooking breakfast when I heard her yelling for me to come to the living room. I ran out, initially thinking something was wrong, before I saw her pointing at the TV excitedly, spoon forgotten on the floor. "Mommy, look!" The commercial showed several children talking to a doll, feeding it fake food, dressing it up. I watched for about 20 seconds before it ended, and a choir of children sang "We Love Feed Me Phoebe." "I want that toy, I want that toy, Mummy, please," she begged, standing up and practically bouncing on her heels. The toy was slightly high technology given its AI voice recognition feature, making it around $25. I really didn't have much money to spend, but God, those eyes of hers, and I was getting paid that day. I knelt down, pulling her close, the scent of maple syrup and her hair filling my nose. "Phoebe, huh?" I murmured, tucking her hair behind her ear. Her eyes, wide and hopeful, stared back at me. They were the same deep brown as mine, but held a sparkle I sometimes felt I'd lost somewhere along the way. "Yes, she talks, Mummy, and I can feed her. Please, please, please." My heart ached. $25 might as well have been $2,500 right now. But then I remembered once again, today was payday. It wouldn't be much after bills, but maybe. Just maybe. I hummed, trying to sound thoughtful rather than terrified of my bank balance. "She looks like a very special doll, Sweet Pea. Mummy has to go to work now, but I'll think about it, okay? It's a big decision for a talking doll." I gave her a squeeze, hoping the hesitation in my voice wasn't too obvious. I saw the slight flicker of disappointment, but then her face brightened. "You'll think about it? Really?" "Really, really," I confirmed, kissing the top of her head. "Now let's get you finished with breakfast before Miss Carol gets here, all right?" She nodded, a determined little bounce in her step as she went back to her bowl, though I noticed her eyes kept drifting back to the now empty screen where Phoebe had been just moments before. I watched her for a moment, a fierce love swelling in my chest. If I could give her the moon, I would. For now, I'd settle for seeing if I could swing a talking doll. The morning rush was a blur after that. A quick hug from my daughter, a rushed handover with Miss Carol, and then I was out the door. The chill morning air doing little to cool the financial anxiety swirling in my mind. The image of those hopeful brown eyes, though, stayed with me, a tiny persistent tug on my conscience. It was just past noon when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another goddamn work email, but it was a text from Miss Carol. "Hey, quick update. Your little one is adorable as ever, but she's been going on and on about Feed Me Phoebe since you left. I think you might have a new mission on your hands." I smiled, a genuine, tired smile. Mission accepted. Miss Carol, mission accepted. The rest of the workday crawled by, each minute ticking slower than the last. My mind kept replaying the commercial, my daughter's beaming face, and Miss Carol's text. When my shift finally ended, I practically flew out the door, making a beeline for the nearest Walmart. The toy aisle was a chaotic symphony of primary colors and plastic. I found the Feed Me Phoebe display, a towering wall of identical dolls, each packaged in a bright pink box. My heart did a little flutter kick of anxiety as I picked one up, the price tag staring back at me. $25. It was a significant chunk of what was left after rent and groceries, but then I imagined those wide, hopeful brown eyes and, well, the doll was in my cart before I could second-guess myself. The drive home felt endless. I clutched the steering wheel, the pink box rattling softly in the passenger seat, a strange mix of dread and anticipation churning in my stomach. When I finally pulled into our driveway, my daughter was already peeking through the living room window, her face lighting up the moment she saw my car. "Mummy's home," she screeched, Miss Carol's gentle laughter following her as she burst out the front door. I met her halfway, kneeling down and pulling the box from behind my back. Her eyes went wide, then possibly wider. A gasp escaped her lips, and she threw her arms around my neck, squeezing so tight I almost lost my breath. "Oh my gosh, Phoebe, you got her! You really got her!" Her joy was infectious, washing away the last vestiges of my financial worry. We spent the next hour on the living room floor. She ripped open the box with an enthusiasm that belied her small size, carefully pulling out the doll. Phoebe had big blue eyes, rosy cheeks, and a perpetually cheerful smile. She came with a tiny plastic bottle and a spoon. "Say something, Phoebe," my daughter commanded, holding the doll up. Phoebe blinked her big eyes. "Hello, I'm Phoebe. What's your name?" Her sweet, synthesized voice chirped. My daughter giggled, a sound that was pure music to my ears. "I'm Fiona, but Mummy calls me Fifi." I leaned in, ruffling her hair. "That's right, sweet pea. You know Phoebe kinda sounds like Fifi, doesn't it?" I winked. She considered this, then nodded eagerly. "It does." The rest of the evening was a blur of feeding Phoebe imaginary food, dressing her in her tiny outfit, and listening to her repeat programmed phrases. My daughter was utterly enchanted. It was worth every penny, I decided, watching her pure, unadulterated happiness. Bedtime came, and my daughter, exhausted but still buzzing with excitement, insisted Phoebe sleep right next to her. I took them both in, kissing her forehead. "Sleep tight, my little Fifi, and you too, Phoebe." "Good night, Mommy," she mumbled, already drifting off. I closed her door almost all the way, leaving the slipper open for the nightlight to peek through. I went to the kitchen, tidying up, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the only sound. I was just about to head to my own room when a faint, metallic whisper drifted from my daughter's room. I paused, listening. It was Phoebe's voice, but it sounded different, not the cheerful programmed tone from earlier. It was lower, slower, almost conspiratorial. "Fifi," the doll whispered, "do you ever get scared when Mommy leaves?" I cocked an eyebrow. That was a weird question. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence for a moment, then my daughter's sleepy, muffled voice. "Sometimes." "And what do you do then, Fifi?" Phoebe's voice was unnervingly soft. Another pause. I wait for her to come back." "But what if she doesn't come back?" the doll asked, the words dripping with an unsettling sweetness. "What if she goes away forever?" My breath hitched in my throat. It's gotta be the program glitching or something. It's AI after all. Maybe it's just veering off track. Many modern AIs do that. I walked in slowly, giving a nervous smile to my daughter, who looked a bit scared from the doll's question. "I want to turn Phoebe off until the morning so you can get some sleep, okay, darling?" I said softly. She nodded, too tired to protest. I flipped the off switch and tucked her in, giving her a tired kiss on the forehead before walking slowly out of the room, shutting the door with a soft click. I walked slowly to my own room, the soft click of Fiona's door echoing unnervingly in the quiet house. My mind was a whirlwind. What was that? I replayed Phoebe's chilling whispers. What if she goes away forever? What if it wasn't just a glitch, or the AI veering off track? It felt intentional. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I got into bed, but sleep was a distant dream. Every rustle of the sheets sounded like a whisper, every creak of the house like a metallic whirring. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, my heart thumping a restless rhythm. Was it just a faulty toy, or was there something more sinister at play? The image of Fiona's wide, scared eyes flashed in my mind. I chastised myself for buying such a thing, for letting my financial worries be overshadowed by a momentary indulgence. The minutes stretched into hours, each one heavier than the last, until finally exhaustion, a heavy blanket, pulled me under. The alarm jolted me awake, its cheerful beeping a stark contrast to the lingering unease in my head. I felt groggy and unrested, a slight headache throbbing behind my eyes. I dragged myself out of bed, the memory of last night's incident still fresh. The house was quiet. Fiona must still be asleep. I padded to the kitchen, brewed coffee, and started packing her lunch, moving through the motions of the morning routine on autopilot. The sun was just beginning to peek through the window, casting long pale shadows across the living room. Just as I was buttering a piece of toast, a small sleepy figure appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Morning, Mommy," Fiona mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, sweet pea," I replied, forcing a smile. "Sleep well?" She nodded, still half asleep. "I'm gonna go play with Phoebe." She turned to head back to her room, her small hand reaching for the doorframe. But in her sleepy haze, she misjudged the distance. Her little finger got caught between the doorframe and the rapidly closing door. "Ow!" she yelped, a sharp surprised cry. She pulled her hand back, her face crumpling as tears welled in her eyes. My finger! I rushed to her side, scooping her up. Oh, sweetie, let Mummy see. I examined her finger, already red and starting to swell slightly. It wasn't broken, thankfully, but it was clearly painful. I kissed it gently. Let's get some ice on that. No playing with Phoebe just yet, okay? She nodded miserably, still sniffling, allowing me to carry her back towards her room, where I knew there was a small first aid kit. After putting ice on her finger for a couple minutes, she calmed down. I gave her a kiss on the forehead. I settled Fiona on the sofa with a cartoon for a few minutes, making sure the ice pack stayed put, then went back to the kitchen to finish packing her lunch and grab my purse. The house felt too quiet again, the kind of quiet that held its breath. I kept glancing toward the living room, a residual knot of anxiety still tight in my stomach. It was just a toy, I told myself. A very expensive, very glitchy toy. As I reached for my car keys, a high-pitched, saturating voice tiptoed from the living room. It was Phoebe. The voice was perfectly clear, devoid of the metallic static from the night before, which made it all the more unsettling. Oh, poor sweet Fiona. That nasty door hurt you. Does Phoebe need to kiss the boo-boo on your finger? A special, very big kiss? The words hung in the air, sickeningly sweet. Before Fiona could reply verbally, a sound ripped through the air. Not a tearful whimper, but a sharp, panicked, animalistic scream of pure agony. Mommy! No! It hurts! Get it off! I dropped the keys, the sound swallowed by the sudden, horrific noise. I sprinted back down the hall, my heart hammering against my ribs, a cold dread flooding my mouth. I burst into the living room. Fiona was sitting on the floor, weeping hysterically, desperately pulling her arm away from the doll. Phoebe was tilted forward, leaning into Fiona's hand. Its plastic face was expressionless, its synthetic eyes wide and blue, but its sophisticated, articulated jaw, the one designed to simulate complex speech and chewing, was clamped down. It had bitten her. But it hadn't just nipped her. There was a sickening, wet-crack squelch sound as I watched. The doll's internal motors whirred loudly, working hard against the resistance. Blood, bright arterial red, was pulsing and oozing out around the edges of the doll's mouth, coating the pristine white plastic in a horrific slick gaze. Bones crunched and snapped under the pressure, and I could see a white nub sticking out from the red. Fiona's index finger was being actively pulverized. The mechanical teeth, designed for lifelike interaction, were now grinding with unfeeling, programmed precision. I could see the sickening result of that grinding. Tiny shards of bone and shredded pink-white tissue were visible, mixing with the thick coppery blood that dripped onto the carpet. The doll was chewing, its mechanical jaw hinges flexing and straining as it worked its way through flesh and cartilage. The sheer unthinking brutality of the attack, the cold war mechanism destroying my daughter's body, paralyzed me for a split second. Then a guttural scream tore itself from my throat, a sound of pure maternal horror. I lunged forward, not thinking, just reacting. My hand slapped blindly against the doll's rigid plastic back, searching frantically for the recessed power switch. My fingers found the tiny nub. Click. The whirring stopped instantly. The jaw went slack. The blue eyes stared blankly. Phoebe released the mangled, ruined stub of Fiona's finger. Fiona didn't stop screaming. She only screamed louder, clutching the oozing, devastated ruin of her hand to her chest. I looked down at the doll's pristine cheek, now streaked with my daughter's blood, and the metallic coppery smell of the damage filled the air. The doll lay silent, a grotesque, blood-spattered parody of a child. Its off switch flipped, leaving only the sound of my daughter's ragged, agonizing sobs. It was 10 minutes before we arrived at the emergency room. I brought the doll with me, but removed its batteries as I drove shakily. It's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. I just kept saying like a damn mantra. She wailed and sobbed in the back seat. I demanded the emergency room staff see us immediately. She was bleeding out, goddammit. The daughters looked dumbfounded. They couldn't make any goddamn sense of it. There was no reason for the mechanical mouth of a doll to be strong enough to pulverize a human finger. They told me begrudgingly that they wouldn't be able to reattach it, but I already knew that. What I saw in the doll's mouth when I put it away didn't even resemble a finger anymore. They put her under anesthesia and stitched her finger up. She's left with a nub. A goddamn nub instead of a finger. And she's only 4 years old. It's been a few days since the incident. I've stayed home from work since then, watching over her and pampering her the best I can. I called the company that made the doll today, and it went straight to voicemail. I tried every number of every goddamn factory, location, and HQ they had, and every time, it went to voicemail. I'm at a loss. I'm fucking devastated. Fiona's condition has improved significantly, but if I can't stop remembering the sight of her finger being mauled by a goddamn doll, I'm sure she can't stop remembering how it felt. Please, have you ever heard of this goddamn doll, or had any similar strange or terrifying experiences with a toy?